Hello, this is Professor Nelson with the Jewelry Design Department at the Fashion Institute of Technology. Another tutorial, this one dealing with how to paint micropave. Micropave, guys, means tiny little pave, obviously. But in its application in the jewelry industry, really what it tends to refer to is stones set in a linear fashion, okay, that are bead set. Sometimes preset, sometimes not. Presetting means sometimes the settings are built into the original model. Sometimes those settings are cut in by hand after the casting is completed. Okay, I'm going to show how to paint micropave. I have a number of projects active right now in our classes that are using this, so I figured it would be a good general tutorial to get up. Okay, this tutorial is happening in Painter, obviously. And I'm just setting to a minimal textured paper because stones are tiny. Alright, so first thing I need to do is I need to lay out my pave, lay out my design, and where I'm going to put it. Okay, so where I'm going to put it on the center line of this motif right here. Okay, now in Painter, the way you would do this is you would use a good sized brush. I would love to know where my gold palette is, but since I don't know where it is, I won't bother myself with it right now. And this should be white. Okay, so ready to go. So I'm going to lay out my stones. This is 200% zooming. You should really not go over 200%. And by the way, these are probably too small of wires to really put this on. I think I'm dealing with about a 7/10 wire, which you could not realistically set with micropave. But the technique will work. Oh, sorry. Painter Wacom artifact there. So I'll come in here and I will draw the stones. With a brush, the easiest way to do this is with an on-yellow metal. This would be a mixture of neutral tint and Van Dyke brown, and to outline the stones. In Painter, the fastest way to do this is take a large brush and paint the stones in solid, which is what you see me doing here. I'm not terribly concerned about getting them absolutely perfect. I will be coming back into the center of these stones. I will use the magic undo button there, though, to finish them out. Same thing here. I don't want... When you come to a point like this, guys, coming around here, you have to leave enough room for a bead at the end. So you never want to tuck the stone right up against the corner. There's that Wacom artifact again. I'm getting those repeatedly lately because I actually have two Wacom tablets running off of my computer. I have a Cintiq tablet running simultaneously with my regular Wacom tablet, which is what I'm using right now. And for some reason, when I got the Cintiq tablet up and running, it made the tilt reaction on my brush much more sensitive. So if I tilt the tip of my brush much at all, I get that strange artifact, which is very annoying. Moral of the story, don't run two Wacom devices off your computer at the same time. Okay, this layout didn't turn out so good. That's a little too much area at the top, but it's fine. Okay, so there's my basic layout of stones. I need to make these now circles instead of blots. I'm going to use a smaller brush. Now it's a little tricky because if I were working with a paintbrush and gouache, I would have drawn these in on top of the yellow metal and then I would have come back in and filled them in with either a neutral tint wash, or I would have put them in with some kind of a yellow wash. I need to make these a circle, so I need to pick what color I want to put in the middle. The color I won't use is white. I don't want white in the middle. Honestly, on yellow metal like this, it's actually okay to just use yellow ochre. So maybe that's what I'll do. A dark shade of yellow ochre would be fine. And you can see by doing this I get a very nice dark outline around the stone, much finer than I would have been able to paint in Painter freehand. If I were on white metal, obviously this would be gray. I do want to be a little more conscientious about the stone shape at this stage. And spacing, as you've often seen me do with stone rendering, where I'll draw facets in dark and then in white, so I get two chances to get it right. It's the same idea here in a way in Painter, at least. I do a quick layout in the dark color, and then the center color I refine the layout to make sure I get what I want. So that will do as a basic lay-in. Next thing I'm going to want to do now is I'm going to actually go into diamond colors, which are all the grayscale colors here. I'm going to take my brush small, gouache means I'm going to paint careful. Okay, I'm going to do a diagonal line across the center of the stone. On yellow metal, it would probably be nice to do this with a bit more of a gold tone to it. It won't matter much. So for example, I could do that. Gouache, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference in gouache. This would just be neutral tint. Maybe with a touch of yellow ochre or Van Dyke brown to give it some of that warmth. But you'll see when the stone is rendered that it won't really matter. There goes that artifact again. It won't really matter. Whether the stone had the dark color or the brown color or the gray color. The gray color is a little lighter, so to do an actual comparison I would have to get it as dark. Something more like that. But it really isn't going to make a huge difference at the end of the day. Okay, next step now, the rest of the stone's painted in white. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a dot in the pavilion, the lower right corner of each stone. lost control a little bit there. And already, I'm starting to get the feeling of micropave. Okay. The next step is going to be a diagonal stroke across the crown of the stone. These are awfully tiny stones. I was right. These have got to be about 8/10 at the most. So it's actually almost too small to even do this much detail. There goes that artifact. And if you can't do this much detail, your stones are actually too small to really paint, so you wouldn't want to go much smaller than this for sure. What you're looking for is a feeling of facetedness. You're looking for a repeating kind of angle. So it feels like the stones are all being hit by the light in a similar way. And now that does look much more faceted still, okay? The next step, I'm going to pick which stones are going to be solid white. Some of my stones are going to be a solid circle of white. I'll pick those based on where the light would fall, where the highlight on the metal would be. I'll also pick it based on stones I don't like how they're turning out. So if there's a stone that I've been painting that I'm particularly unhappy with, I will paint it out. It's a balance. You don't want to do too many of these. You don't want to do too few. You want to make sure that the form reads, because that's really what this is all about. This is really about capturing the form of the piece. Certainly by the time you finish picking and choosing and filling in these bright white stones. The form of your piece should be pretty well defined in the diamond as well as in the metal. You'll notice I'm trying not to do too many in a row. 3, maybe 4, that's it. Because if I do too many of them in a row, it becomes overpowering. Okay, so that's the next level. After this, all I have to do is blend. And the blending is done by adding more strokes. I'll add a vertical, horizontal, or both. Another dot. I want to leave some dark stones intact, which means some stones I won't add anything to. They would be the stones that, for reasons of form, would be in a cast shadow. I want to avoid having too many stones where you have a circle and a dot. So if I have that, I'll actually draw a diagonal line right down the middle of the stone. Not that this is a bad thing to have. It's a bad thing to have all over the place. Okay? You want to have lines and dots and dashes so they look faceted. But you don't want to have every stone treated exactly the same way. So what I've got now is the full white, the mostly dark, and the dark. Okay? So I'm going to step back and look at my design and decide where I want the moderately white ones to be. Okay, where I want the moderately white ones to be, I'm going to come back in and thump in more brush strokes. In Painter, I'll actually slide the brush stroke up in size a little bit. I'm also being handicapped a little bit, this is my mistake, in that I was working below the drawing layer, which means that my strokes could not overlap the pencil, which I do need them to do, particularly for this stage. So I will come in and make moderately bright white stones. These will be the messiest ones. These will be the ones that break out of their circle the most. And that's okay. That's not bad. Those stones have a fairly nice range of value from light to dark. They're blending together, it's getting a little messy. That's alright, because I'm going to now tidy things up by putting in beads. In Painter, you draw the beads the same way you drew the stones. You're going to come in and draw a blob. I prefer about a 2.9 brush. And then you'll correct the blob by filling in the center with a yellow color. So I'm blocking in my beads. They're shared beads, 2 between each stone. One at the point. And I'll actually treat this in gouache the same way. These are so tiny that I actually will come in and paint little dark dots. And then fill in the center of the little dark dots. There's really no other way to paint something as tiny and delicate as a bead. I've actually got enough space for 2 beads there, so I'm putting them in. And it feels like I'm kind of killing my rendering doing this, but I'm not. I'm adding more detail, which is always a good thing, until it's too much. This isn't too much, though. This is fine. Okay, so there are the beads drawn. Now I'll fill in the beads. Starting with a nice golden yellow color. Take this down to about 1.9. Now, I'm hitting them all. I'm going to stop doing that now. I want to hit the shade. These are the shadow beads. These are the beads in this yellow, this golden color, that are going to be in the shaded area of the piece. So they're going to accompany or bracket the shaded stones, or they're going to be in places where I have a wire here that's going to cast these in shade a little bit, so I'll let them be shaded. Because you have to use everything that you've got to encourage form, including your beads. next beads will be in the light bright yellow. Changed my mind on that one. There. Oh, missed two. Okay. So, the goal so far has been to make sure that we don't lose the sense of distinct stones. Okay? That's the hardest thing to get the feeling for, is that you have, I'll zoom out on this, is that you have this feeling of individual diamonds going around and around and around. Okay? Now that we have that, I'm going to let it go a little bit. If we feel the need. This is actually pretty nice. I could actually call this done. Okay? But see how you end up with dark areas that were so important to getting the distinction of the different stones? Now those dark areas can tend to look kind of clunky. So there are two final steps that I do. One is I do a wash. Over the widest part of the stones. In gouache, it's the same thing. Light gouache. Wash in white. If it gets on the metal, I don't care. Because you actually get that kind of effect in pave, where it almost, the light coming off the stones almost ghosts the metal. Okay? That's the first thing I'll do. Next thing I'll do is come back in with a small tight brush, and I'll pick out any areas that are noticeably really dark and that I don't feel are working as such. And I'll just put a white dot in. It doesn't even matter if it's a legitimate place for a dot. We have enough legitimate detail going that it's going to read as a whole bunch of individual stones, no matter what I do. So basically, now that I've been so careful to establish the fact, I can be a little bit reckless and destroy it a little bit, where I feel like it's too strongly delineated and doesn't look real, doesn't look right. I would call that done. Okay? Yes. That is believable. Micropave, set it along a linear element. I might find things I still want to change. I better stop before I make this tutorial run too long. But for example, if I decide I would like one more solid white stone, I can do that if I feel like it would add. Okay. All right. That's it. Thanks for watching.